Welcome to the Shop Talk Podcast, everybody. This is episode 001. My name is Jeff Adams. We have Drew McCowan, Mike Herndon, Jesse Ivey, and James McKinley here. And, we were talking today about some of the things that, we ask you guys to do as our students in regard to when you guys present on any given presentation, any given project. We usually talk about what the project is, the process is made, the materials used, challenges faced, and what our favorite part was. That might sound familiar to you. It should sound familiar to you if you've been in our class for any period of time. And so we kind of wanted to discuss what that looks like in terms of the other side of the table when we're getting ready to present these projects to you as a project. And so just kind of talking about the processes and how we determine what is something that is appropriate for a student to do as, on one side of the thing. You can have... let's just talk about chessboards. Chessboards is a really, really common thing that we do. You can just have a simple board with a laser cut, pattern on it that you can play on. We've done that before, and it's a great temporary solution. Usually doesn't last very long. On the other end of the spectrum, we've had, walnut and maple custom pieces that, would be a great heirloom piece that looks great in, any sort of, classy room. So kind of the in-between in those points, I think, is the minutia that we're trying to get into right now. Talking about how we as instructors try to cater that towards you and how we can help you reach that. So
I think you touched on some good points there too. Like whenever we think of creation, we always discuss like limiting factors. So, we teach these kids to the best of our abilities and we give them some really good resources. A lot of these resources that we're providing for these students are not really obtainable to the average kid.
Laser cutters.
Exactly. Laser cutters, the tools. So I always think of this as a three-rung kind of consideration when creating criteria or design of any sort. And the first is always going to be financial or resource-based. So how much can we pump into this project and what resources do we have? I think that is true for any project, whether that is in the construction field, any sort of trade. We just have to analyze what does the client have that's available in terms of resources, and then how can we apply that to a project. Number two is your skill. So how good are we at this thing? Is this the first time we've made a chess piece, or are we a lathe master and now we're cranking out bishops and pawns like the best of them? And then the third, of course, is going to be we have resources, we have skill, and then time. So how much time do you want to invest in this project? Is this something that's going to take 24 hours, or is this something that I want to dedicate a good portion of my year to or my life to? So time, we have resources, and then, of course, we have skill.
I think another factor, at least that I'm cognizant of, is how interested are these kids going to be? I remember last year when we were first pitching the idea of Chessstruction, I was like, well, this is really cool, and I'm going to really enjoy it. But are a bunch of middle school students going to enjoy this? And the answer emphatically was yes. But I was kind of doubtful of it at first.
it's not always a given.
Yeah,
It's not always a given.
Yeah.
So that's a great point, and I love the mentioning the time piece. To you students, in our classes we are usually pretty loose in terms of how much time we allow you to take on a project. We really encourage you to challenge yourself in some details and really trying to perfect your skill, trying to sharpen the, that other, metric is the skill by just taking the time to do that. And so, that's really, really important too. And we try to incorporate that into our plans for sure.
Especially with the time part, because there's quite a few that go through the projects pretty quickly. And it's like, you have a whole week to work on this, perfect your skill, because your project now looks the same craftsmanship as the last ones and as the ones before. There's been, like with some of them right now, I can see that there's hardly any improvement of their craftsmanship from creating from project to project. Like there's others in our class that are like you can see they've come a long way. And that's what I wish a lot of the students in there would pick up on. Is like, hey, I have 3 or 4 days to work on this project. I don't need to, blast through this project in 2 days.
The standards are starting to rise because we have students that are not only working faster, but they're also working better.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you can be done in 2 days, but we're giving you 4. So I want you to take this whole time and take your time and work. Yes, you're faster now. That's awesome. I know you can be done in 2 days, but let's raise the standards. Let's push ourselves to be better.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, particularly working with the hand tools a lot of the time, I don't know, I can only speak for myself, but I'm really, really impressed with the capabilities of some of our students to cut some super crisp lines. For those of you listening that have never tried to cut a straight line through a board with a handsaw,
It's hard.
It sounds easy.
humbling. It sounds very, very easy. And it's a very simple concept, but my Lord, is the execution of it extremely challenging. And I just want to commend some of our students right here and now, then let them know they're way better than me. And they're just really, really good at it. And, it's an interesting conversation that I had with another student the other day, working on the project that we happen to be working on at the moment, where we're working on a small tabletop drawer. We call it a drawer, but it's basically a box within a box that has an open end so that the other box can function as a drawer. And this student who was only given, a wide block was talking about how he was to cut the side pieces or whatever and cut them straight, and he couldn't do. He was trying to tell me that he couldn't do it, and I was like, I pointed at the other students. I'm like, they do it. This is the thing. Like, challenge yourself. It's a skill, buddy. Like, that's what we're working on. We're working on those fine minutia in these projects, like these small things that at first are a hindrance or an annoyance or something like that. Whether it's cutting a straight line or, maybe to a musician, just hitting that, that little note that just really just ties the chord together. Just those fine little details that just push us to the next level. It's just fun to watch.
Yeah. Something that Drew and I have had a couple of really, really good conversations about is I, especially when I first started in this position, was paralyzed by I don't want to fail. I want it to be, if I'm going to use the resources that we have, I want to use them well, and I want the product to be perfect. And I've come to the realization that that's not realistic, especially at the beginning. And we are all making mistakes and growing because of them. And that's the expectation. If you're not making mistakes, you're not pushing yourself.
Yeah, creating an environment where mistakes are good.
Yeah.
Right. Creating an environment where we go, hey, we fail forward, right?
Yes.
Obstacles are opportunities to get better at that. Like, oh, look, you cut that line. It really wasn't straight at all, but we can try again.
Yeah.
But you did it.
Yeah.
But you did it.
Yeah, and that's, at the end of the day, that's really what matters, is making sure that we're doing the thing. I mean, if I give you 10 minutes to shoot 10 baskets, if taking the extra time to making sure that the ball goes into the basket is what would work, and you just drain all 10 of them, to challenge you, maybe I need to give you 7 minutes. We're just going to push that metric one way or another, whether it's, increasing, the difficulty in something or decreasing the time that it takes to execute, the project, whatever it is. You're constantly improving, one way or another. And so, yeah.
I think that lends hand one of the mantras that I've carried with me through woodworking is production over perfection. And I come from a place of perfectionism in my youth, which, when you say that, it sounds like a good thing, right? Oh, I strive for perfection. But the reality is, just as Mike's saying, is it creates paralysis. And it forces you to think in a negative light, whereas I create for the sake of creation. And in that regard, you develop those skills over time. And one thing I've theorized a lot about this, but we live in an era where AI is becoming more prevalent, and perfection is actually incredibly obtainable these days. And it's unfortunate because perfection is something we strive for as humans, but we will never obtain. It's like a curve. We'll crest in calculus. The limit. We'll get as close to perfection as we possibly can.
Yeah.
There's beauty in that, but there's also a new kind of beauty that I'm recognizing, and it's the beauty of the human element, right?
Yes.
You look at the perfect manicured box or cutting board or whatever it is in a Target or a Walmart, and it's on a shelf, and there's nothing wrong with this creation, but it was made by a machine versus, I pick up something made by one of our students, and maybe it's a little rough, maybe it's a little raw and the angles aren't perfect, but there's energy in that item that makes it unique and special. And I would far rather have a shelf designed by one of our students in my home than something that I buy at a box store that has no soul, as it was created by a series of metal moving parts.
And I think to your point too, one of the things I look at when we start a project is how do we make it something where they can make it their own, right? It's easy to give them a kit.
Sure.
Say here's the sides to your box. Just screw them and glue them together.
Yep.
Cool. We have a bunch of boxes that more or less look exactly the same, right?
Yep.
But when we can create that element of here, now try this, now add this, and then we start seeing those mistakes. When we did the hammers, we have students that were taking the cutting their corners or cutting their tops and planing them, and oh man, look, James, there's a big splinter on this. Cool. What about putting angles on your edges? Oh. And boom, all of a sudden it makes a new thing, right? So it was a mistake. It was, it was just part of the process. But suddenly I'm like, look around, your hammer looks different than
How do
everybody
we
else's.
how do we cleverly make that mistake a feature?
Yeah. But just this whole idea of them being able to take a project and in some way make it their own. We saw it a lot in chest struction, right? Taking those boards, and even though we had some of the relative cookie cutter, hey, here's your board, we're just going to fill it with resin. Kids were trying different colors and different color schemes. Hey, what about painting the edge? What about routing the edge? And suddenly we had a whole bunch of different boards that all were beautiful, that all looked different. So for me, I really like the idea of stepping back at the end of any project we give our students and going, they're all different. They're all unique. We're getting away from that cookie cutter, here's a kit, put a kit together. You can make it your own.
Yeah, it's that's what I like to call the blunderbuss of ideas. We always talk about that. Like we have like the basic idea of how it starts, and then we tell our students about it, and then blam, like you tell 20 different students to do the same thing.
Make a box.
And you're gonna see the variation is impressive to say the least, and it's fun just to see what's coming up, and I'm honestly impressed at the amount of times that a student will tell me, or like come up to show me something. I'm just like, wow, that's awesome.
The ones I like too, like they make a mistake on whatever the project is, and then they pivot like right then and there. You can see their brains turn, and then they're like, oh, I can. Like we've all said, we could turn this into like a feature, and they just adapt. And like, okay, now I have room for the bottom of the shelf, and so I put like a flat piece and cut one out. I'm like, I love that when you just see that happening.
Yeah, there was another student too when we were doing our hammer projects. Something to the effect of the handle being cut in a super jacked up way, as I recall. Like it wasn't. I want to say that the handle was too small for going into the thing. Or maybe it was the other way around. I'm not really sure. Yeah.
Sorry. Said the name.
Yeah.
Cut that out.
But
Sam.
it's okay. That they. So he came up with something that was like, holy cow! Like that's actually going to work.
Yeah.
Like it was super weird. Oh, that's right, because he did like a lap joint.
He cut out the side of the hammer.
Ah, that's right. Yeah, that was super clever, and just thinking outside the box of like, how do we take this simple thing that it's like, okay, like that's on its face, that's not going to work. But I've come this far, so making that bug into a feature, and it totally worked.
We were doing drawers yesterday, and one of the students had that, and he went to cut a piece, and he's like, man, this knot is driving me nuts. I keep cutting right here, and it's really hard to cut this piece. He's like, you know what? I'm going to make this the front of my drawer. I'm like, you're going to what? He's like, it looks cool. I just can't cut through the stupid thing. He's like, I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to cut off these edges here, and it'll just be the front, and I'll make that knot like the highlight of my drawer. I'm like, all right, here you go.
That's awesome.
Take it vertically, kick it
That's
off,
really
right?
cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's funny, man.
Yeah, like wood is a very friendly medium, and if you really get to the core of what we're doing here is, yes, we're teaching skills in woodworking, but really that's just a vessel for problem solving. And embedded in this, whether or not these students take woodworking with them for life, I'd like to think everybody should to some degree, because it really is a beautiful art. But the reality is they might go on to work with metal. They might go on to work with plastics. They might be designing things in 3 dimensions. But all of these principles translate, you know, and these problems that they're encountering on their own. You know, you mentioned, Jeff, about like, and James, about cookie cutter construction. Like, we could predetermine kits and say, here you go, put it together. They all look the same. You get the same experience building an IKEA desk.
Yeah.
You know, there's instructions, start to finish. But you take that same person and say, okay, build me a desk that you designed. And how many problems are they going to encounter?
Yep.
So in our instance, you know, we're giving them a set of parameters. We want a drawer. But in a controlled environment, we're giving an opportunity to fail with guidance.
Absolutely.
And I think that blunderbuss of ideas that you're mentioning, Jeff, is just saying, like, let's go ahead and throw everything at the wall. We'll see what sticks and what doesn't, and then we're going to be here to help you pick up the pieces when you encounter those issues.
Yeah, and you know what's more, you know, at the beginning of this podcast, we started talking about, you know, what the creative process looks like for us as the instructors. One thing that you may, you know, notice if, you know, being inquisitive enough to, you know, to look into this, but giving the students enough leeway to make things their own really makes things easier on us. Like, if we were going to go through and make, you know, cookie cutter kits for every little thing, that means we got to get out, we got to measure every single board, and we got to cut them all to exactly the same thing. Whereas this one, we just kind of rip it up a little bit and just like, here you go, guys. Like, here's the components, go. You know, and we get people coming up to the, you know, front table where we have, the way that we do is we'll have all the, you know, the materials laid out on this table, and you know, it's kind of like the, you know, like the marketplace of material. So they'll just, you know, come on up there.
The lumberyard.
Yeah, the little lumberyard. And so they're coming up there, you know, with their, you know, their other pieces that may have cut, or they're coming up there with you know, a measuring tape, and, you know, they're, you know, checking things out. And you can, they really have to think about what it is that they're doing and where the component where they're going, you know, that they're looking for is going to go. And so, you know, talking about taking a bug and turning it into a feature, you know, the bug for our aspect would be, you know, needing to go into the nitty gritty of cutting things to the exact piece for every single thing. You know, that's difficult. That's hard. That takes more prepping. You know, we were talking about, you know, all the prepping that goes into everything that we do. How do we take that bug and make it a feature? And so if you're talking, I'm just trying to connect the dots there, you know, talking about taking those principles that we have on its face for, you know, just basic woodworking and applying it to life. Being able to think like that and how to use whatever it is that you're working with and make it work for you.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree, because anytime we make a cut for a student, we're taking away an opportunity for them to learn.
Yep. So pretty neat stuff, man.
Yeah, you're talking about process too. Like, one thing that I think that we see in a lot of students, unfortunately, it sticks with some and it doesn't with others, but is pushing the idea of sketching before building. So getting the idea on paper. And
it is starting to get better, as opposed to, you know, when we first started out, you know, particularly with our afternoon class. We also have some time to, you know, really, it's a smaller number of students in that class, so we've got like the ability to kind of like, you know, really spend some more time with them, more one-on-one. But I do think that the sketching is getting better.
Well, it'd be cool to not call out, but maybe point out or use as good examples those that do a great job with that, you know, that went through, and you see how much further ahead they are, how many more things they're able to do, you know, when you notice that. There's a couple I can think off the top of my head that were just when we started the drawer thing, immediately started drawing. Right, they got the paper out, and people were like, I don't know how to design it. I'm like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Draw a rectangle.
Well, and like, how many times have you seen a student draw something out, and that's their idea at first, and then they start building it, and they're like, oh, like there's, you know, some you know, critical dimension that they just like didn't, you know, they missed something. Whether it's like, you know, talking about a box within a box. If you're talking about, you know, a box within a box, whatever the height of the inner box is, you have to subtract that from the thickness of the material that's, you know, going in and all that type of stuff. And that is
Tricky.
It's tricky. Like
Yeah.
that's
It's
something.
like the number one mistake when you're making anything that's a rectangular square.
It happens all the time.
I don't know how many like
All the time.
desks and thing I made at home where I'm like, all right, it's this wide. So, okay, I'm going to build this piece and cut this piece this wide. And I'm adding these side pieces. Oh,
Yeah.
And it doesn't fit.
I just cut it. These are 1.5 inches wide each, and I just cut it 3 inches too short.
But what I've noticed,
Start over.
what I've noticed with that is some of the students are saying, "Oh, I didn't plan well. Next time I'll plan better." And some of them are saying, I didn't plan well. I guess planning's overrated."
Yeah.
But I mean, like, as we get into other modes of building stuff, 3D printing or lasering, or when we get into, I mean, I'm not planning on this, but Drew's into architecture. Like, planning's not optional. I think with
Let's just go start building this building and see
that's
what happens.
right. Yeah. With these laser cut chessboards, I think we went through 5 or 6 different iterations before the camp when we were finally like, okay, this is gonna work. And I still, like, I look at them and I'm like, we could have done that better, and that's okay. But planning, yes, it's difficult, and yes, sometimes you can get away without it, but it's so important.
Then with the planning part, we have one student in there because I was watching that student draw out their box, and then everyone else around him is using, like feet and inches, but he was using metrics.
Yeah, I'm like, I watched that one. I was like, look at
I'm
you.
like, why are you using
love the
metric? He was
curve.
like, well, it's easier to make adjustments, and I can count it out easier in my
True.
head. I'm like, okay.
That is true.
And then-
I agree.
I totally forgot that too.
I'm all about the freedom units, but man, that metric system is it's kind of handy. It's kind of handy. I can do basic math. Start throwing fractions in there. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, what's going on? I got like those like math equations like floating.
Beautiful mind.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Getting back to like the 3 principles that we had discussed about designing a project, you look at students who skip the drafting process and they want to get right into it. And I think that's a manipulation of the time and resource element. Because if you look at us in the real world, we know how much a hardwood costs. So we are very adamant about making sure none of that goes to waste. Because it's our own money. Whereas, once again, giving these students resources is a part of what we do, and having them utilize more resources than necessary is a part of the process. They have to fail. So in order to do so, we have to give them more. But really what they're trying to do is manipulate the time aspect, speed things up at the cost of resources. So we're going to perhaps make a few cuts that are wrong. Oh, I can grab another piece. Doesn't matter. Not my dime. I'm going to speed this process up. But the reality is by neglecting that drafting process, you're actually adding time on the back end of things.
Yeah.
Because now we're having to go back and redesign. So how can we educate the importance of that planning phase and almost make it a beautiful thing? Not something to be dreaded, but saying like, hey, I'm going to actually expedite this process massively by figuring out all the issues right here and now with a piece of paper and a pencil.
I have an idea. We can cut this if it's a terrible idea. What if we gave them Monopoly money and said, you get $100 in Monopoly bucks. This is the amount of wood you can buy for $10.
I love that idea.
We've talked about doing that.
Well, back to the resources part, I've noticed they're a little bit more quicker in their designs and going straight into it when it's with the project boards. Because then when we did the hammers and
They
the
planned a
hardwood,
bit more.
They planned it a bit more because they knew that cutting this will make and break their project.
And it's more effort to cut that hardwood.
Yes.
Yes, and that's as you were talking just a second ago. That's something that I was trying to. I guess I'm still in the process of trying to figure that out. But I did notice that as well. That there was definitely more planning and more care and more prep going into what potentially. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe the potential is like the potential of outcome is what we're looking at in that aspect. Like when it comes to planning, the reward to planning is tied to a greater potential outcome. Because if we're talking about it like a spruce board, it's a spruce board. There's nothing wrong with it. But, when it comes to the hammers, we have these exotic hardwoods that are extremely pretty. Some of these students even adults, like they see a piece of Paduke and they're like, oh yeah, like that's the finish. And I'm like, no, that's the wood. and they're like, really?
I
Like
forget
it just
that.
grows like that? Like, yeah, it does. Is that not gorgeous?
I
And
also
so-
wonder if part of it is like they're like, not all of these students are going to be doing woodworking their whole life, but some of them may be like, hey, this is a hammer that I could be using for decades.
Absolutely.
That it's going to last a long time. I'm going to take my time and plan this out. Whereas these spruce boxes, like, even if they do take extra good care of it, it's project board.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it could, last a long time too. But that also kind of ties into something that we usually try to incorporate with the planning of our projects. I think is like, what is something that one of these students can use? Like, for example, like one of the first projects that I did in my first metal shop class was we were learning to use the brake and the shear, and so which brake and a shear, what it is it's sheet metal tools, and so basically a
Thanks
shear.
for that, Jeff.
Huh?
Thanks for that, by the way.
Yeah, a shear is basically it's a machine that's on the ground, and it's like a large pair of straight scissors for cutting pieces of sheet metal. And so what we would do is we would cut those out into a certain way, and then we would draw our project, which in this case I think we did a small toolbox with a hinge. And then we also did one, there was a dustpan. And, we draw it out and everything, and you're basically drawing sleeves to, make the thing go together. If you can imagine, just like you would if you were trying to make a box out of a piece of paper, you would, draw and bend it, in order to put it together. Like origami, like that kind of thing. And so we'd cut it out on the shear, and then we would use the brake, which it's a similar looking material, but what a brake does is it bends the metal in a particular fashion. So you bend those up, and you drill the holes, and you put the rivets in, and like that's the joinery method would be the rivets, and so that's the thing. Goodness gracious, I got drawn into like what the tools are.
You see how excited Jeff gets when he starts talking about
Dustpan.
Yeah,
type
man.
of tools.
You just said
But the reason I brought that all up is that dustpan is still at my parents' house. Like, it's still there, it's still, usable. And that's something that we try to incorporate with our thing is like, that's something that, one day I'll be able to show my kids that, I did that in high school, and, we're still using it. And we try to incorporate that into some of our projects, most of them, if we can.
Yeah.
And we talked about the planning a lot. One of my favorite things with students, and hopefully if any of them are hearing, they're rolling their eyes right now, but I'll tell them to turn around. So if you don't know our classroom, we're facing the instructor as all the students are basically facing the same direction, but behind them is our engineering process on a poster. So they'll get caught or they'll get stuck about what's next or what have I done, and I'll like turn around. I'll tap the shoulder. Well, just turn around and let's take a look and let's go through that process. Did you skip a step? Have you spent enough time on this step, or do you need to go backwards, or do you need to ask yourself the right questions to get back into that process to where you need to be to keep going forward? And a lot of times, we just talked about it a bunch, but a lot of times it is that planning, right? So making sure you've gone back and accounted for those things to make this process easier for yourself. Because it's a bummer when you get in there and you see one that's really frustrated. We have a couple that kind of do that like physical, drop their shoulders and their head comes down. Yeah, the shoulders drop, you got it. You'll see that and like, well, where are we at? It's usually the ones where one of us will beeline to them. Saw their shoulders drop. Right there. Right? And we'll jump over and find out. And I always tell them, turn around, look at the process. Where are you at? Right. So I think that leads a lot into, their process. I mean, again, it's a very natural process. I kind of love it because they can look back and go, oh, well, I did that. Well, I did that. And I didn't, and you see the light in their eyes. Like, I didn't realize I did that. Well, yeah, you did. It's right here. So being able to show them those things, just like we talked about with failing and fixing it, that's part of the process. It's in there. Whether it's planning or whether it's, towards the end when you're almost done, you're starting to share it or see if the drawer opens or not, right? If it even works or if it even fits. So yeah, I really like the idea of utilizing a process, and having one written literally on the board in colors is kind of awesome. But it leads credence to all the things you guys have been talking about with that, as far as planning, as far as making mistakes. So.
Where are we at? That's a good question to ask. And planning is creating your map, it's interesting you mentioned the frustration because, you would look at these students and say, oh, they're frustrated because of this difficult problem. Maybe it's the first time they've encountered it. But the reality is that frustration never goes away. like even us, we're building. How many times have we in this week hit a roadblock in our process and been like, oh, this is frustrating.
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Literally yesterday.
And I think what that planning phase is also really good at doing is it's good at creating natural stopping points. So in the creation process, like there are natural phases where we can put the project away. Any good project that's worth keeping for a lifetime, we talk about your dustpan, for instance, it takes time and you might need to take breaks mentally, physically. And the reality is a lot of dangerous things happen in the wood shop when we're fatigued, we're frustrated, we're trying to get stuff done. And a philosophy of mine is if I ever hit that point,
Step away.
Get to the next natural stopping point on your roadmap and then say, I'm going to come and approach this a different day.
I have a buddy who cut off a finger because he kept working past that point.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's when mistakes are made, right?
Yep.
Well, and like, not only like are we talking about, safety and, avoiding mistakes, but like how often have you guys come across an issue with, whatever the case is, whether it's a, woodworking project or, some sort of other deadline, that's going on for work or whatever, and you're just trying to cram it in. How often has it happened for you guys where you just step away? Like you just kind of hang your hat on that one for the night and you just come back the next morning. And what seemed impossible yesterday is, and you're done in like 10 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like just so quick. Like it would just with a fresh brain. Yeah. Like whatever the case is, but like it's crazy what, sometimes stepping away and just having a minute, taking that time,
Yep.
to reach your end goal.
So
We have some students that do a great job with that too. I've noticed that. You'll see some do that shoulder some and they'll just kind of see them put their tools down, maybe pull out their phone for a second or take a walk,
Just
maybe
go
do a
grab
little
their
lap.
water and they're just-
Yep. Just thinking, contemplating.
Yeah.
So I was watching Blacktail Studios last night. They're a woodworking channel. They're awesome. I love them. Go watch them. But he ran into this big problem, and he was telling this story about when he was in high school. He had a buddy whose dad had this nice garage and let his son and all his friends come work on their cars in there. And then every once in a while, he would be working on his nice vehicles in there. And one day, he'd been doing some work on the engine and ran into a problem. And he goes, "Well, guess I'm pulling the engine." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, this happens.
This is what, yeah.
This is the art of being a mechanic.
Yeah.
This is the art of woodworking. Sometimes you just need to take a step back, and that is not hard for young people, especially young men.
You mean not easy?
Yes, I meant not easy. It's very hard.
Which is it?
Yeah,
It's difficult. It's difficult to sometimes you
want to muscle it.
You want to muscle it, and you get this idea of this preconceived notion of when you're going to be done with the project or how it's going to go, and sometimes the project just has a different idea.
Yep, it takes longer.
Yeah, and yesterday, for example, I was I'm working on this little keepsake box. And I have a goal where I wanted the top and the bottom of my box to be hinged, and when it closes, there's just a solid clap. Like when everything closes, I want it to be. It doesn't need to be airtight for the purposes of what I'm using the box for, but I want it like that, and so I want that's a skill thing that I'm working on. And so I spent the time, I chiseled out, where the hinges are going to go and everything. I'm being super careful with it and all this type of stuff and taking the time. And I go to close the box and it goes, I didn't even close all the way. I'm like,
No clap.
that's not how that works.
It was
And so
It was painful to watch.
So I had to, kind of like look at it and, troubleshoot and try to figure out where I went wrong. And I think I have an idea, but that's just a part of the process. That's how it goes. It's not like, to everybody that's under the sound of my voice right now, you might watch these makers on YouTube and they are, very skilled craftsmen at what they do, particularly around, stupid, simple things like boxes that when they're just like perfectly done, it's the most satisfying thing in the world. it ain't like that all the time. Like it's very, very, very common that something goes wrong, and that's fine. It's okay. Like,
Well, and
you know.
yeah, and Drew mentioned earlier, he talked about this idea of being a perfectionist, and I've always been that way too. And woodworking was really hard for me to get into early on, until I realized watching others, seeing how other people felt, like, oh, okay, he's gonna make lots of mistakes. So to your point, when you watch those videos, there's a lot cut out. Right?
Yeah,
You're not seeing the cuts and scrapes or the bumps and the bruises. You're not seeing the miscuts and the misfires.
Yeah, all that, and
So-
just also taking into consideration the fact that like these people, that are making these YouTube videos, they've built the following and they have these YouTube videos. Like there's a reason you were watching them do the thing.
They've been doing it.
They've been doing it. Like they've spent the time. They have purchased the resources. They have, worked on their skills. They've harped on themselves on that little fine detail enough times to where you do get that end result of where, something gets chiseled out and then they peel off the paint tape and it's just like,
well, and we've watched a bunch of those videos together, and they're wonderful to watch because you see the finished process. You follow, and usually it's not someone talking, right? Usually those videos are the ones that's just music, right? It's just
or just the machine
or
sound.
just the machine sounds, and we're just
Shitani.
watching this like beautiful process like all the way through, and we're all like, oh, we're all making the noises like this. Oh, this looks great. They're great. Personally, I like the other ones. I like the videos we were talking about where they're making mistakes and they're messing up, and we're watching them live, do that. And this guy's like, "Well, crap, that didn't work," and he drops a tool upset or whatever else. But then we see how he fixes it, how he comes back around. I mean, that's what I want to see personally. Like, if I'm in that process of learning the process, I want to see how they make.
Or there was there was a video that we were watching of a guy making a box. It was a beautiful box, like gorgeous, and he did similar thing with me and my hinge story. This guy, recessed the hinges. It was great. It looked all gorgeous, and he mounted everything up, and it's just the chef's kiss. And then he realized that he forgot to cut out a relief cut, so that as he was trying to open the box, the hinge was catching on the outside of the material, and so it wasn't allowing it to open. He just kind of, like, I need to fix that.
Which in the moment it's hard to appreciate without looking at it. Like, it was a beautiful box,
Oh,
like
yeah.
like
Gorgeous.
expensive materials, like all
I think
this
he ended up
detail
selling
work.
that particular box for like $3,000.
Right.
Like a very pretty box.
The one that I like was the one that Mike found when we were in the portable with the kid. That's just walked into this woodworking stuff by accident.
Oh,
Started
Make with
making it-
Miles?
Yeah, and
Oh,
you
Make
can
with
see all his
Miles.
mistakes that he made and everything. And
He highlights them.
yeah, and so that's what I like about that one
Yep.
because
Oh yeah.
that one's like, okay, you were more a little bit attainable. If I were to make a video, like become a streamer,
Go
YouTuber,
watch
it'd
Make
be
with
like him.
Miles. He's great.
Because like these other guys that you guys watch are kind of boring because they talk over what they're trying to do. I was like, I just want to see what you're cutting. Don't need to talk about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that those mistakes that feel like the end of the world happen more often than not. Like there's at least one on each project.
For sure.
And if there's not, I feel like I missed something.
That's coming back to that whole thing of like, if I give you 10 minutes to shoot 10 baskets, maybe we need to give you 7. Like if you drained all 10 of them, maybe we need to
You
speed
need to
it up a
challenge
little bit.
yourself a little
Yeah.
more.
Mhm.
Yep.
And I think we try and do that with our students, especially the ones that we find early on are good, right? Really have the skills, those cutting those perfect lines, and what else can you do with this, right? We can tell that you can make a box, you can make it easy. What else can you do? What can you add to this? What flair can you do to this box to make it your own, like we talked about, but also the next level.
For sure. And that kind of comes back to like a responsibility of us as instructors. I feel like that's another thing, that, we try to do. And, sometimes we don't necessarily always come up with something. And, we try to be fluid in the way that we do our, our classes and everything. But part of the battle is also, because some of these students, like they've literally never done any of this before. So part of it is trying to tell a student what is an option, like what are the options, what can you do, like we were talking about traditional methods of joinery the other day. We're talking about miters, talking about dovetails, talking about laugh joints, talking about mortise and tenon. If you don't know what that is and how it's used or what it's used for, particularly around tools too, I feel like, a lot of the times, let's just, take in term. I mean, most of us are homeowners. And so, a lot of times if we're talking about, home projects and all that type of stuff, if you're talking about going to, get something that you need to do something at your house, whether it's, something with the water heater, or maybe you have a leaking gutter, or, whatever the case may be, how different do you approach the project when you know what the thing is that you need for it, as opposed to like, okay, that's doing that. I don't know why it's doing that, and I don't know how to fix that. So I feel like that's another thing too, is trying to, when students reach that, that point, like to where like, hey, you're really, really good at that, stepping up to the next thing. What are the options? Like what's something that you could do? Like you really, got that butt joint great, and you really plugged it up with that dowel. What else can you do there?
Well, I think
What are the other options?
I think it's such a great lesson. You guys know my background was exercise science and training clients for years, and the adage or the idiom I always gave them was like, look, there's a whole workbench out there that is the gym or that is exercise, right? There's all these things you can do. I'm the instructor. I'm going to give you the tools for it. You're going to have to use them, right? But my goal is to give you more tools. My goal is to constantly be adding tools to your tool belts. And I think that's what we're doing with skills, of course. But like you said, I mean, that's just straight knowledge, isn't it? Right? Just, hey, there's how to properly use this piece of equipment.
Literal
Right?
and figurative tools.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. So giving them all those elements to where when they come up to a project, they go, cool, I could do this 6 different ways. Right? Which one's best? Which one do I have? Which one do I have access to?
Or
Which one works with the material I have?
feel like today?
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to try that. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, just giving them the proper things that they need, again, knowledge, tools, literal tools, little equipment, but really just giving them things that they can put in their tool belt. So when they approach each project, the goal for us, obviously, I think is, from day one to day, the end of the program or class, to go, all right, where are we at? How much have I learned? If I looked at that project day one, here's all the things I had. Do I have more now? Am I better than I was yesterday? This is the one I always use, right?
That's interesting you talk about that, like your expectations. I guess for me, for students, my expectations, like, we have a particular group that spent almost a year with us. So if you asked me, what would you like for these students to walk away from in this year that they spent with us? I think ultimately I'd say I would like for you guys to have the ability to plan and assess solutions to the problems that you find, whether they're based around the shop, whether they're based around a trade, or they're just based around everyday life issues.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty.
I mean, realistically, how many of these students are going to be in the trades long term? I think if we're focusing on just the students that are going to be in the trades long term, we're failing 2/3 of our class. And I think you're absolutely right. Our goal needs to be, can you assess the situation, and can you walk away better for it? Can you solve that problem? Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of other lessons in there, but like for me, I'll never be in the trades.
Yeah.
I don't think I
Yeah.
ever will. But woodworking, oh my gosh, I've done so many things at home. You talk about being a homeowner and having to fix things, and I've had to learn tools, learn the process. But it always comes back to me. It always comes back to that same engineering process. Okay, as soon as I find out I've got a problem, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to plan it.
Yeah.
Right. So the goal for these students is to have that mentality, right? Going into any problem. All right, I've got this thing I need to create, or this thing I need to fix, this thing I want to do or want to build. All right, where do I start? Right. And yeah, so to your point, at the end of our time with the student, I want them to be able to have that process in their head, whether it is, again, woodworking or anything else. To be able to have that, because it applies to everything. I know it's the engineering process, but you're engineering life too, right? You're kind of doing everything. So
Yeah, and that kind of, I think that kind of brings us around full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning of this episode, without putting that label on it exactly, is just being able to identify what any given problem is, troubleshooting that issue, and then solving that issue.
Yeah, like you said, it doesn't have to be the engineering process. That's just what ours is called.
Yeah.
But it's a process. Everything has a process. So
For
teaching
sure.
them that process, they can apply to
Yeah,
anything.
whether it's the engineering process, the OODA loop, like whatever, the answer is that, whatever label you want to put on it, there's all kinds of, things to be learned of, troubleshooting issues and problem solving, regardless of whatever pursuit it is that you are going after. And so I think that's a good place to stick a pin in this one, guys. What do you think?
Yep.
All
Yeah,
right, guys.
good one.
We'll go ahead and wrap this one up. And so like, share, and subscribe to the Bent to Steam Academy podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We are the Buff Boys. We'll see you next time.